I find how I feel grief is very physical. Like when I was saying my best friend moving away, when that happened, I remember feeling this sense of heaviness in my body. Getting up in the morning was really hard. My arms felt really heavy. It's almost like I had like heart pain from a broken heart, and that was affecting my entire body and my well-being. And I found it also really affected my mood. I had a very strong sense of jealousy with other people.
Makes sense. Makes loads of sense.
Yeah, seeing them with their best friend in the same city was really tough for me to see, and it made me have this like sense of guilt if I wanted to hang out with friends in the city because my best friend can't be here because she's gone, and other people get to be with their friends. So now I'm angry because my friend's not here and I feel like I can't do anything about it.
So you're visiting lots of different emotions. Absolutely. And I think that's really characteristic of grief, that it is a tour of all the different emotions in really overwhelming kinds of ways, you know. Your mind might get really stuck on what you've lost. You might find it hard to think about anything else. Sometimes we have bad dreams. Sometimes it makes it hard for us to eat or to sleep or to go to work or study or whatever. And we might feel really numb and removed from things, you know, as well. There's kind of the sense of how is the world carrying on, you know, when this huge thing has happened. And I think all those things are really normal reactions to loss. I think sometimes we feel a bit ambushed by them too. You know, I remember in a context of loss for me, you know, a huge context of loss, I was really happy with how I'd done that day. I'd supported my family. We'd made some arrangements about what needed to happen next after someone we loved very much had passed away. And I actually thought I was doing pretty well. And I went outside to take a breather and I sat on the lawn at her house. And I didn't expect to, and before I knew it, I was lying on the lawn, just sobbing my heart out, you know, and that intense sadness just showed up and took me by surprise, right? So I think absolutely lots of different emotions can show up for us when we're grieving, and they can surprise us by showing up at strange times. We used to think, you know, that we would kind of just get over it. Over time, you know, the grief would get smaller and suddenly, you know, we'd just poof, it would be okay, you know. And we know now that that's not what happens, you know, and you'll be experiencing that at the moment, you know, that there's a great model of grief that I think is really helpful, that actually someone who was from Christchurch came up with. Her name was Lois Tonkin, and she was a counsellor and a teacher, and she was a wonderful human being, and she had this idea that actually rather than the grief getting smaller, the grief stays the same size. So if we imagine a circle and that circle's your life, and initially that grief covers up that whole circle, that is all that there is, you know, in that moment. But actually over time, our lives get bigger, right? And so our focus gets a bit wider. And so the grief stays there and stays the same size, but our lives kind of move around it, and so we don't find ourselves as consumed with it going forward. I think that's a really useful way to think about grief and what's happening for us in our minds and our bodies, that actually that'll stick around, but it does feel less intense over time, and from time to time it will ambush us, you know, because we'll be doing something, it'll be Christmas or whatever, you know, and we'll put the hats on and you'll automatically think of that person who should be putting a hat on, and that'll pop you straight back in, you know, to visit that grief space again, you know. And we come in and out of it over time. So I think all the things you're talking about make a lot of sense, and chances are you'll visit that space off and on, and that's okay.